All right, let's start talking about this. Legion of Superheroes, the new Legion of Superheroes #1. This is another episode of the Flight Ringers podcast. I'm David King. That's Dan Spottswood.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
We are professional cartoonists, and we are Legion of Superheroes experts.
So today we're looking at Legion of Superheroes Volume 4, Number 1. It's got a cover date of November of 1989. We've got Keith Giffen on plot and pencils, Al Gordon co-plots and inks, Tom and Mary Beerbaum on dialogue, Tom McCraw is the colorist, and Mark Waid is the editor. I just realized I don't have a letterer missed. Do I have a letterer message? I don't think the letterer is credited on the back of the comic.
Oh, really? It's Todd Klein.
It's weird. He would have had to have lettered
it's either.
Is he listed?
Yeah, it's Todd Klein. I don't
He
know
is
if
listed?
he's listed or not. Let me look.
Sorry, I already fucked up. But
You fucked this up, dude.
what's weird is all of these people have written the Legion.
Yeah, here he is, Todd Klein.
Oh, I just skipped over him because he wasn't important.
Did you say Tom McGraw
I thought so.
and Mark Waid?
Mark Waid is the editor.
No, let's talk about the cover for a second.
Oh, okay.
There was just that detail in that thing you sent me about the gold ink.
Mm-hmm.
I put a link to that oral history you sent me in our YouTube description, but it's behind a paywall.
Yeah,
You must have bought it.
I
And you
did.
copy and pasted it and sent me the whole thing.
I told you that. I guess it was a couple years ago.
It's very kind of you to do that, but
Yeah.
our audience will have to pay if they want to read that.
Mm.
But in that thing, Mark Waid's talking about how they had to ship the comic a week late because they ordered gold, a fifth ink, gold ink for the ring, and probably for the logo.
Right.
And he said the print shop hadn't had experience doing that, and so they, instead of printing the gold ink first and the black line on top of it to make it look like this is a gold ring, they printed the gold ink last, so it went down as the final layer, and this ring was just a gold blob. And
something really similar happened to Chris Pitzer like 10, 15 years ago when he put out like Project Superior, the anthology. It had
that is silver.
But they messed it up and put it on like, I guess, last, and it covered up all the line work.
Yeah.
And some of the pages still look kind of okay, but it messed up all those books.
Did you realize that you said it was about 10 or 15 years ago?
It was probably like 20 years ago.
It was more like 20 or 24 years ago.
Oh, shit.
No, it was right about the time I was moving away from Chicago. So that was 2003 or 4.
I think
So
it was
20 years ago.
I think it's the year I met you, actually.
Yeah.
Briefly,
I remember
in St. Louis.
when I lived there, Jeremy Smith, he got a comic in that, and he said, "Oh, David, you should get in this."
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he was like trying to petition Chris Pitzer to put a comic of mine in there or use me for it. And I'm sure Pitzer was like, "This guy's not ready. He's no good."
Shit. I don't know.
Uh,
He's retired now.
Yeah. But as for that metallic ink that they were going to use here, I think they were just going to follow the lead of the previous Legion #1 from a few years earlier that had silver.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really shows up. It kind of looks metallic under here when you get the light just right. This has a silver logo. And then I was even looking at this issue 300 from a few years prior still that has gold.
Though, but that gold and that silver, they stand out to me. They look unusual. Like they look like they were made with a paint pen or something. But the volume 4, it just looks like a dull yellow to me. It doesn't even look like a metallic color.
Well, yeah, they redid it without the metallic.
Oh, they redid it without.
Yeah, he said that they came back with just a blob of gold ink.
Oh.
And that's no good. So they had to, I guess, destroy those, print it again, and they shipped a week late, is what he said.
Yeah.
It just didn't get printed with the metallic ink.
Right.
But I think they would have continued on their streak of having
The streak is
like
broken.
deluxe metallic ink.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of also confuses me because he says the print shop didn't know how to do it and they'd never done it before. So I guess it wasn't the same outfit that did issue 300 or the same outfit that did this issue number 1 that did this one. Because those guys goofed.
Well, this one's a lot trickier than the last one, though, because that one is just pure. It could be like a stencil. It's all silver, right? Does it have any black on top of it?
No.
No. Whereas the new one, it has black on top.
Oh, yeah. It could be that this one, they printed the silver last almost, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true, because you can almost see up close in person. I can see that there's a little bit of white, like it's off register, the silver.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe they did that. Maybe it is the same idea. They just had never done it with black over top. And this does seem like a complicated piece with the painted color.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is not painted color here. This is what do they call it? 4-color process color.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's done. So it could be a very challenging cover, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see, I don't know, like a reconstruction of what it was meant to look like. If it would make a big difference.
I mean, I can really imagine it if, like, the logo was this gold.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't too shiny, but you can see that it's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, if you had this in person, you could see that this has gold ink and it's not just yellow or brown or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then to have the logo, or definitely the ring, maybe the logo, something akin to this guy.
Yeah,
it would stand out. I think it would look pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it'd look good on the logo. I don't know about that ring. I mean, all one solid color without. Would they put white on top of it or something for kind of the gleams, or would it all be just like one flat gold with a little?
It would just be shiny. Yeah, it just look like gold instead of yellow.
Right.
I think there was something else I was going to say about the cover. I can't remember though. It was something that came to me when we were just talking just now. Whatever.
It'll come back to you.
Well, but we won't go back. I'm not flipping the pages back. All right, I'm going to turn to page 1.
Okay, let's do this. 5 years later. So for the sake of clarity, I'm going to kind of give a brief summary of what basically has happened between the end of the last series and this.
You have 10 seconds.
All right. Don't start the timer yet. I gotta warm up. So, longtime Legion writer Paul Levitz ended his run on Legion, the last series, which ended like 2 months before this one started, and it ended with a storyline called the Magic Wars. And the main thing to take away from that, for our purposes, is that it was sort of like an intergalactic version of Y2K, or what we worried Y2K would be. Like, all the technology in the universe stopped working. By the end, the Legion prevails against the magic guys, and technology starts running again. And Paul Levitz has a nice, triumphant, somewhat optimistic, open ending to the story. But what we find out as we read this is basically a couple, like almost directly after Paul Levitz's series ended, there is a Great Depression that affects all of the United Planets, called the Great Collapse. And it's sort of like what happened to the world when COVID hit. There were like massive disruptions, and it affected the supply chains, and just everything started to fall apart. So anyway, there's great economic upheaval, and all the planets are no longer getting along. The utopian, optimistic future of the Legion seems to be done. A year later, the Earth actually secedes from the United Planets. That's all we really need to know. I don't know how to cap it.
No, I think that works.
I mean, there's obviously a million things I could explain that I figured out that happened in between, but those are the things I feel like you kind of need to know if you come into this cold and go, why the hell is everything fucked up? There's a huge economic depression. The United Planets is basically gone or collapsed or
Right.
dysfunctional, and Earth is no longer part of it. I guess we could say like the Kuns. How do you pronounce it?
I say Coons.
Coons.
I always make sure hit the D because I don't want to.
Oh God, the Coons.
But I don't think it's Cuns. That's not worse, but that's also weird. The cunts.
The cunts.
The coons.
I mean, they kind of play a role too. What are they in this? They're kind of. Are they Russia? Are they Japan? Maybe more like
I
Russia.
don't know. Like, I don't know if you would plan to talk about the text pages at the very end very much. One of them was really only one of them had anything too deep in it, and that's the Coon invasion and the economic collapse one. I mean, should we just turn the page and keep talking? The dissolution of the or the secession of Earth from the United Planets, which has collapsed, kind of gets us right here. They've scooted us up to 5 years later.
Right.
And this very dramatic opening page. Like, have you ever seen a splash page like this before? And it's really cool. He's using his toothbrush to do this inking.
Is that Al Gordon?
I think this must be Al Gordon got paid the whole rate for this page.
Yeah.
No Giffen on this one. There was that thing in that article too, where Tom Bierbaum was like, on those text pages at the end, they look like this. Mm-hmm. Tom Bierbaum said that the he and Mary got paid the whole rate for that because Keith didn't draw and Gordon didn't ink.
Right.
So the Bierbaums got the whole page rate for that. It wasn't split up. And so on this page, I would imagine that maybe a split between the colorist, the letterer, and Al Gordon, the inker. I bet Keith didn't take any money.
It's kind of him.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get a new copy of this. This one's kind of like, I don't know. This is the first one I ever bought. It's kind of flimsy. You know how they get when they're real old and you read them a lot?
I've got the one I first bought that I was looking at just earlier, and its cover recently fell off.
Oh, damn. Well, there's a mint condition one in a 50-cent box near you.
Yeah, I've got like 6 of them, like bagged and backboarded or whatever. Because like, this is too good a comic to just be sitting here in the corner bin, getting probably thrown in the dumpster in another couple months.
I thought for sure I had multiple copies of number 1, but I don't. Like my duplicates kind of begin at like issue 6. I have 2 from 6 to like 15 or something in this box over here.
Maybe it's, a couple of those, like almost all of them were always in the quarter bins or the 50-cent bins, but they might pull a couple of them out because they'd be like worth $1.75 instead of 50 cents. The first issues, and then like the issue where Superboy dies is the only one I can really think of other than that.
Sometimes for a number 1, they can slap an extra 50 cents on that price, on the cover price, and sell it to you.
But nowadays, I even see the number 1s of Volume 3 in bins all the time.
Oh, those are some of the most common.
Because they printed the crap out of them, probably.
Yeah, because there was a big boom of those Baxter comics, like Legion number 1, New Teen Titans number 1, Omega Men number 1. Mm-hmm. There's like Thriller. There's billions of Thrillers out there. It's just weird. All the direct market Baxter books that costed
they costed
$1.50.
I would have thought the opposite would have been true since they weren't like sending tons of copies to like, all the gas stations and grocery stores. Maybe they'd have a much smaller, more targeted amount.
Yeah, but I think there was just a blitz of them. Like, I think maybe the comic shops kind of bought into it, and they're like, "This is gonna really build up our business or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because these are these direct market only
Mm-hmm.
books, you couldn't get them anywhere else. So maybe a comic shop just was like, yeah, I'm going to buy 1,000 of these because people can't get them anywhere else.
Right.
You know? Okay, so page 2.
So we start with a kind of a TV channel flipping montage, which I feel was used kind of frequently in the 80s. Like Frank Miller kind of opens The Dark Knight with something like this. Even movies like RoboCop kind of relied on channel flipping to sort of as a expositional device to kind of give you a lay of the land. So we start with kind of a commercial that's like a documentary of the rise and fall of the Legion of Superheroes, and it shows like brief moments like the death of Lightning Lad and the Fatal Five, the Great Darkness Saga, but then it sort of ends mentioning that things don't end well for the Legion, but the channel flips before we can learn any more about it. And we see a news story about some anti-government terrorists who are supposedly in league with the Coons. I think we kind of find out that they're more like against the EarthGov, which might be oppressive at this point, but they're being labeled as terrorists. Universo, an old Legion enemy, seems to be the leader, which is kind of surprising. And then finally, we settle on an interview with former Sunboy Dirk Morgana.
Yeah, do they make it clear? They don't say who's watching the TV, but
Not yet. That's coming.
oh, okay. It is kind of an interesting juxtaposition. The puff piece, I love the '90s kind of documentary,
Right.
and then like the quote unquote real news. It's not
Right.
This is just NBC News. This is not
Right.
Democracy Now. This is
Right.
mainstream news.
Right.
MSM.
I mean, there's a couple things I'd point out real quick. Like right before the channel flips on us, when they're telling us about the documentary, they say Dirk Morgna is narrating it, which kind of gives you an idea, helps suggest the kind of person he seems to be in the future. This sort of like has been trying to remain a celebrity any way he can.
They do it, yeah. Like just that sentence makes it like, oh yeah, now a few years later, he's just a celebrity. He's a talking head on a TV show, or he's like, I'm trying to think of who narrates shows.
Right.
Instead of being the star of the show,
he's probably
he just talks,
doing Space Arby's commercials and
right. Yeah, it's like that. You want to do a Legion documentary? Who do you get? Who's the celebrity? Oh, Dirk.
Right. Well, he does have a somewhat official position with the government, as we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also note, like, we see the science police look a lot scarier than we last remember them.
Oh yeah, this is a thing that Giffen does a lot. I think when he wants to just have someone be, I think Giffen knows that a lack of face means scary. I guess. I mean, maybe it's that simple. But like, yeah, like you have fascist oppressor people. Don't give them a face. That helps,
Right. And then there's a little bit of a joke here with I think there's a joke anyway, because they're hiding out in this kind of, what is it, like a sewage plant or something in the Hamptons?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It kind of feels...
Right, yeah, 1,000 years from now, the Hamptons district is... it's a slum and a haven for terrorists.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, right off the bat. These guys, they're breaking down the class oppression, or they're addressing it anyway. Did you talk about this last panel? They switched. Whoever's watching has flipped a channel, and now we actually see Dirk.
I think I did mention.
Oh, okay. I guess that doesn't say it's him, but we know it must be. He's got
right.
And actually, talking about the design of the 5 years later Dirk. Like they give him this long hair. And I wonder if there's any temptation to make him, or to give him the full on Michael Bolton, bald on top, party in the back or whatever,
Right.
He's still got, like, this is all hair plugs up here, people.
Right. He's got that and the fancy clothes and the earring, like trying to telegraph douchebag.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, yeah, Giffen is a good cartoonist for that. Like he knows the
Mm-hmm.
kind of details, and I think beer bombs
Mm-hmm.
too are in their writing and their dialogue. They know that the just the right details to
Mm-hmm.
to put across. They're good at that. Like
Right.
I always struggle if I'm writing a comic and I want to really use the fewest words and the fewest details to get my point across. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, they nailed it. Like you see this
Right.
dude, what a bag of shit, you know?
Right. And I guess, a lot of fans, especially Sunboy fans, didn't like this turn of the character. But like Giffen said, it was always in his character. If you look at everything he had done before, he'd always been a little scandalous with the ladies and a little frat boyish. He just took it to it. He said he just kind of took it to its natural conclusion, like what kind of character he would end up as a man, I guess. Like the seeds of it were there.
I wonder how many people who are fans of like this stuff specifically, the Legion stuff specifically, and just in general, these kind of periodical type of narrative things, like they don't
Hmm.
want these people to ever change, and they think
Right.
that like they feel like, oh yeah, the character of Sunboy, he's a rich guy, he's a cad, but
Right.
he's still good at heart, and he'll never be anything other than that. Like that won't advance. He won't become,
Right.
like we always see it, like oh, like I don't know, our parents or whatever, or
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
as they get older, they get more conservative and they become psychotic in our eyes.
Right.
And but a comic book character, he is that way permanently.
Hmm.
No matter how many years pass, he's always going to be chasing skirts. He's just going to be a hero,
Right.
and he was nice 10 years ago. He's nice now. His opinions are never going to
Right.
evolve.
Yeah. There's sort of this, like when you're a kid and when you attach yourself to a character, you might be like, I like the Hulk because he's stronger than anybody, and I want him to be stronger than anybody. It would be lame if anybody was tougher than he was. But when you get older, especially if you're interested in like writing comics yourself, I guess, but you realize, well, that would make a boring story if he was the strongest guy. The bad guy needs to be tougher than he is. You sort of detach from that, where you want your character to be the characters you like to be the best or to be perfect or infallible. And like, to me, Sunboy was kind of a boring character until this stuff started to happen. It's when he becomes kind of more complicated in the series that I began to like him more. Somebody, for a good story, somebody has to be the jerk.
Yeah. Yeah, and he gets like he doesn't seem complex now, but yeah, there
Hmm.
as time goes on, like I don't remember
Right.
the issue 28 or something, and over that
Hmm.
span, like he
Right.
gets a little conflicted. There's complications in his life.
Yeah, it's interesting too that we kind of find out, and I don't know if this is spelled out in the book or it might be in that source book that the Tom and Mary Beerbaum wrote, but he was actually one of the holdouts. He was one of the last guys to quit the Legion. Not the last. He quit about a year before he joined EarthGov, but he was adamantly anti EarthGov, and he stuck with the Legion a long time through the 5 years, which is not what you'd expect seeing him like this.
In that issue 28, which is kind of a spotlight, it does kind of make it
Hmm.
clear that
Yeah.
he was trying to keep it together, and then there's like only maybe one more leader of the Legion after
Uh,
him.
so, as I mentioned, Dirk was reportedly one of the last Legionnaires who quit during the 5 year gap. But after a year on his own, with no future prospects, and missing the fame of being a superhero, he kind of ends up selling out and becomes an EarthGov liaison. He wants to be a celebrity still. I mean, if this comic about the future were written today, as opposed to 1989, he'd probably be a reality TV star. Like anything to stay in the limelight. Um, kind of a an unspoken sort of theme that maybe I just read into these comics, but I constantly see is like the parallel between the Legionnaires and like child celebrities or like manufactured kid groups like Menudo and stuff, where they're put together by a manager, or like in this case RJ Brand, but they're not like young and cute anymore. They can't go by boy anymore. They're all grown up and they're kind of down and out.
Yeah.
But then you always have like the one child star who's doing all the commercials and trying to keep it alive. And I kind of feel like Dirk is a little bit that guy.
Yeah, Dirk, you would think he's the Zach, but he's actually the Screech. like this
Ooh.
this skeevy son of a bitch. He had a sex tape 3 years ago, right?
For sure. During the 5-year gap.
Yeah. Black Dawn.
I think that's what
that's
what it was about. That's what it was. It can now be revealed.
No, that's a good point. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, like, and also the also painting RJ Brand as the sketchy manager, child exploiter guy.
Right.
Kind of weird.
Right.
Kind of
And I know
sheds a new light, just casts a new light on RJ Brand.
Right. It was sort of easy for me to fall into seeing things that way because I didn't actually read much of the middle stuff, if any of it. Like, I basically went from reading like my mom's old Silver Age and early 70s Legion comics to reading this.
Oh, yeah.
And this was like right around the time that we were seeing a lot of things like Leave It to Beaver reunion special. And there were some programs that seemed to be capitalizing on that idea of like the kids coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like that to me. And like 30 something was on TV that had this sort of theme of that they're like old and middle aged now and have problems and kids. And it felt like those themes were entering the comic a little bit.
This talk show thing too, it's like, it's really on the nose where they're interviewing Dirk and they bring out the archival footage. He's like, "Oh, that old thing. I'm so embarrassed."
Right. And it's sort of sad. He ends up, completely shitting on Polar Boy there.
Yeah, he totally drags Polar Boy,
who doesn't really get the best treatment, I feel, by Giffen either at the end of the last series where he's a little bit of a joke, and then when he shows up later in this one, he's definitely played as a joke. But here, I feel like it's kind of heroic in a sad way. Like, he always wanted to be a Legionnaire. He finally got to be on the team. He finally got the lead, and he's like the last guy who still believes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone else has walked but him. He's the lone Legionnaire until he's arrested.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we like his appearances in this issue are kind of like only on this page where Dirk is like, I can't believe what happened to him. He's such a loser.
Right.
And then he has a text page way at the back where he's disbanding the Legion. It seems like they might have had bigger plans for him. Like they could have used him for something else, but we know after reading him that they never did anything with him except to make him a joke and a second banana to Mad Reader.
Right.
Which, I don't know. I think
and those are funny stories, but it just feels like they could have done that with another character and done something more interesting with him.
Right. Yeah. I wish they would have done something a little bit like just imagining what might have been after reading this one issue. It's like, oh yeah, they could have some good plans for the Breck Bannon character as a counterbalance to the, like the sort of sellout, washout character of Sunboy, and
for sure,
and because their powers are the opposite too. Like the one guy is the sellout rich guy, and the one guy is the washout guy. The sellout guy is fire, and the washout loser guy is ice.
I didn't even think about that, but that's really obvious. Yeah, you're right.
But it's also kind of like in Justice League how Giffen had the fire and ice characters, those girl heroes. Like, I mean, as a counterpoint to one another, like their relationship was totally different. But
right, yeah, it I mean, I'm glad he chose the characters he chose, and obviously it should be about Rock. But in some ways, Polar Boy almost fits the role that Chameleon Boy says Rock fills better, because Rock himself is pretty disillusioned
Oh yeah.
and thinks the dream is dead. But Polar Boy is the guy who's like the dream's never gonna die, or I'll never let it die.
Yeah, Polar Boy is the guy who's not gonna sell out. Like
Right.
he is in this 100%. And you can find a shithead like Sunboy who will
Mm-hmm.
follow the money and follow the notoriety. But Polar Boy, he did it for nothing. He was this hero saving the galaxy and nobody knew
Right.
it, and he was that into it.
For sure. And he was willing to kind of be a joke and a fool for years as a sub, but he cared enough that he kept doing it, because he didn't care if he got laughed at, I guess, because that wasn't what he was in it for.
Right. Yeah, and like you say, that makes him a better candidate for the
Mm,
role that they give to Cosmic Boy in this.
right. The only detriment maybe is I don't know that even though I like him as leader, he's not necessarily a good leader in the way that Rock is. He's not had a great track record as leader, I don't think. Right.
No page numbers in this comic book.
I know. I actually wrote numbers in pencil on my old copy to keep track. So we finally get a look at the person flipping through the channels. And it's a hooded figure who's revealed himself to be former Chameleon Boy, Reap Daggle.
Oh, it was Chameleon Boy watching TV.
Yeah. So Reap has spent the last 5 years running his father's company. And he's decided that now is the time to tend to RJ's other dream. RJ's father being RJ Brand, the founder of the Legion of Superheroes.
Let's exploit some teenagers.
I know. I don't know about you. When I first read this, I just assumed he had died at some point during the 5 years.
Chameleon Boy or Brand?
Brand. And I don't remember if he left in the last series or not.
I don't remember. There was maybe more than one storyline where he disappears, right?
Right.
Like there was the one where he went back to Durla and then Chameleon Boy went and got him. I don't know if he came back or not, or Chameleon Boy came back and he lost his powers and he was on trial or some shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right here, I don't know what happened.
One thing that really stands out to me about Chameleon Boy in this series is I feel like, in this, I bet this is the beer bombs, but I think he's a much better character in this series. He's more sure of himself. Like in the Silver Age days, he was kind of a prankster kind of guy. And then like in the 70s, he got a little whiny, and then he turned into like a super cop for a while, where he's kind of like Jack Webb in a lot of stories.
I just remember him as like the espionage squad. Like I'm a detective. I'm always analytical, and like that's what you mean by the Jack Webb stuff, huh?
Right, and that was like night and day from the way he was written early on. He was kind of impish, right? And it's fine, but the sense of humor was gone. It didn't really make sense. And then, around the time he finds out who his father is, he kind of just gets really emo and kind of insufferable, I think, in a lot of stories. But by the time we see him here, he's got that smile on his face. He's even drawing him a little bit older looking. He has like a fuller face and maybe some creases. He just seems more sure of himself.
I don't even remember anything he really did in the series just prior to this, the volume 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was in it, and I remember there's like Giffen gave him a new uniform that looks really silly, and I think maybe he was in that Universal Project storyline. Maybe I guess in my memory, and whether my memory is really tuned into the reality, Chameleon Boy was sort of a non-entity for all that time of the Paul Levitz Volume 3 series. He must have been in there. He must have done something, but I don't remember any big achievements of his. I don't remember him doing anything. Yeah, so maybe it's just me being forgetful, but I don't remember seeing him too much, but here he's like, yeah, he is. The Giffen must like him. He's big in this series.
I think he was one of the guys who ended up on that controller planet that was manufacturing the suns.
Oh yeah,
or the sun eaters.
That's right. Yeah, he was.
But I don't know that he did anything particularly outstanding there. He's just one of those characters.
Right, yeah, like those four characters are kind of bouncing around. They did some time travel and had a DC Comics Presents crossover.
And then he's in that annual I mentioned earlier about Colossal Boy and Starfinger. He goes to kind of rescue him.
Oh yeah, is that under the auspices of the Espionage Squad, or is it some made up bullshit where it's like, oh, Colossal Boy's best friend was always Chameleon Boy, so he's going to go rescue him?
I don't remember. I forgot about that. We should have done this series 10 years ago when I still had my memory. I feel like I'm starting to lose it.
No, I mean,
we were just talking about some of this stuff.
I'm just guessing at it. I don't really remember.
I forgot. There was like
I'm
that
trying to
weird,
think like Paul Levitz.
There was that weird retconned friendship or no. That's
right.
Wait a minute. That was Karate Kid and Timberwolf.
Yeah, but I think there might have been one for now that we're talking about it. Was there a Chameleon Boy, Colossal Boy?
Because he was the first Legionnaire to be friendly to him or something. Everyone else was afraid of him.
Yeah, or they joined in the same issue or something maybe.
Because he's sort of Levitz sort of, or maybe Giffen, maybe both of them. They kind of write the Durlians like they're like some extreme. Like an American caricature of like some Middle Eastern cultures or something like that, where they think they're like very severe and they cover themselves and they'll kill you for minor crimes like.
Oh yeah, like they'll cut your hands off for stealing or something like that. Yeah,
right. I'm not sure, but like everyone's afraid of him.
No, I mean, I don't know where that kind of stuff comes from, or whether it had to have been Levitz or Giffen, either in Legion or in like Omega Man. I think there were some Durlans in Omega Man too,
right?
And that might have been that plot was driven by Giffen. Giffen and Slifer, I guess, was doing that for a few issues. Giffen only did 6 issues of Omega Man, but yeah, that could be like that. Yeah, that weird foreign stereotype. Yeah,
right. And that wasn't around until Levitz and Giffen came along.
Yeah, that was not a Silver Age thing.
Right,
he was just a nice kid in the Silver Age.
Right. Though the other Durlians we saw were bad guys, but they were more standard space bad guys. They were Superman would fight them. They were called like the Chameleon Men. They might have even been like the Chameleon Men from Venus or something like that. They hadn't come up with, in those earlier ones, all the guys are from planets in the solar system.
Right.
It seems so far off. The Martian Manhunter.
But like this ends with this very dramatic. He's like, "Get me Marla on the phone," and it's
right.
Like it's kind of like the last scene of a weekly cop show or something,
right?
And the fact that when he actually does get Marla is not doing anything. Marla's just some employee of his, and like Marla doesn't have anything to do except for like he's like, "Get me Marla to cover for me at work because I'm leaving," is kind of what he wants. I just thought it was kind of funny how dramatic they make this.
Right.
Even though
this big reveal, she knows who he is,
and also these they eventually call them probes. They're androids. I don't think they call them that in this issue. I think there's a text page in one of the subsequent issues where they lay out what these people are.
Again with the facelessness. I mean,
yeah,
no eyes in this case.
They kind of confuse me because they're not human, but they seem like they must be organic somehow. Like they're somewhat made of maybe living stuff. Like they show one getting killed and he bleeds. Maybe that
Right.
was in issue 51 we read last week.
Right.
So they're
They
organic and they're
definitely seem like
alive.
they're more than appliances. They seem to have
Yeah, they have personalities.
like right.
But I think this is maybe the first appearance of one of them, and it's
Well, after they realized the proteans were sentient, they had to find some other alien race to subjugate and treat as
yeah. But these
devices.
aren't aliens. I think they're actually manufactured artificial
Mhm.
intelligences, I guess.
Well, that's a big leap from Computo too, even.
And these people act as their servants all the way through and all over the I don't know, the United Planets, or every world we go to has these guys.
Right.
And
Right.
people treat them as if they're not alive, and they get killed willy-nilly. But then they also have kind of high ranks. Like later on, there's one of these guys who's in the military with Shrinking Violet and stuff. I don't know. They're kind of weird. I bet they had some idea that maybe they were going to have a. I bet between Keith and Al and Tom and Mary, they were like, oh, the story possibility for down the road is to have humanity have to duke it out with these probe android characters. Like that's a
Right.
possibility. I don't think they ever did it. Pretty sure they never did anything like that, but
No.
could have been an interesting idea.
It also seems, I don't know, like maybe given kind of, he has this, I don't know if he just forgets what he's doing and repeats himself sometimes, but there's certain things he goes back to. Like there's like the eye stock character that I think he draws in lots of different contexts. And the guy, he has no eyes and he just has like a,
Oh yeah, that guy.
and the biggest one, and I guess I should credit the colors for mercifully giving him a blue robe this time, but he keeps going back to the purple robes. He has all these characters, like some of the major characters, all hidden in purple robes, like the Time Trapper and the Durlians. And there's another one. I can't remember. Maybe it was that guy at the end of volume 2.
Oh, Omen or
Those-
Prophet or whoever.
Right. Lots of purple robed characters.
You're right. Like it almost seems like he probably expected this to be a purple robe,
Right.
since that's
right.
what the Durlans always wear.
We have Reap sending a message to Marla, and Marla is R.J. Brand's former right-hand man, and he's the adult liaison for the Legion. We first saw him way back in the first appearance of Ultra Boy, and he seemed to be kind of an instructor type with him, who was wearing an almost identical costume with a slightly different logo on his chest. So he's been in the book for quite a long time. Reap is very vague here. Like he says, I'm going to do that thing we talked about. And so he's obviously talked to Marla about this before. And Marla seems to think he's nuts for trying this. Like maybe he's going on a suicide mission doing it. And of course, he puts him in charge here. But you kind of get the sense that he's kind of been running the place the whole time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe Reap has been doing the books or something. But it seems like Marla's been doing most of the actual work.
Yeah, like Marla's the boss. And Chameleon Boy is like, he goes on TV and talks about stuff or whatever, right? Talks about all the stuff we are doing in our company.
Yeah, I think he's kind of. I give him a little more credit than that. I think he might be the accountant. Like he's getting all the books in order and stuff. Like Marla probably doesn't know shit about that. But
yeah, but why would he do that?
More.
He's got a robot who could do that.
Right. Marla knows more about. He's a more hands-on guy. They build planets, right? Or do they build stars? I can't remember which. I think they build planets. But yeah, Marla's probably doing most of the. He looks more like he's doing the actual work.
Yeah, he's looking real old in this panel here,
right?
And I'm kind of surprised they didn't put the little Ultra Boy insignia on him somewhere,
right?
Since that was always his trademark. Like he just looked like an old version of Ultra Boy with that the little W looking green thing on him.
Right.
They didn't give him that.
I don't know. I think this fits his character a little better, at least in this capacity. I mean, he always looked kind of silly. Like, I mean, it's kind of funny, but like in the tight costume. But he was always drawn as an older, gray-haired guy,
Mm-hmm.
but wearing the tight clothes, and I think he might have even had a little bit of a belly, if I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, whenever Kurt Swan drew adults, you could tell there's a difference
Mhm.
between an adult, like a
Mhm.
regular non superhero adult,
Right,
and like a superhero.
right.
You could tell the difference.
I think they probably used him more maybe after Hour, but for as important a role as he had, obviously they kind of gave that to him retroactively. I think because even though he showed up in the Silver Age, we never see him in the Silver Age. But that's when you would think he would almost always be there because they're like 15, 14 years old, running around, like getting shot at. You would think the grown up would be involved a little more.
Yeah, it's like they thought of him for whatever part he needed to play in the Ultra Boy origin or
Right.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of somebody remembered him occasionally, like we just read or we were just talking about Action Comics 392, where he
Right.
shows up and he inaugurates Mon-El as the next leader or something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, in this, I think this may be the first time that they're like, oh yeah, this is a real person and he has a job and he works for RJ Brand.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Before that, I don't know. He was just this middle-aged or whatever, over-the-hill dude wearing tights that looks like Ultra Boys.
Well, he definitely had some sort of supervisory role over Ultra Boy in that first appearance. I remember assuming he was like from Ultra Boy's planet, but
oh, you know where he also showed up was in that awful Secrets of the Legion thing. Like he was
right, and I think that's when they started to fold him back in.
Yeah,
maybe
it could be.
But it's one of those things where, well, since it's a continuous narrative from like 1955 or whenever it started, until the mid 90s. They're slowly dialing up the realism as they go, but keeping it supposedly in the same story. So then they get to a point where things are getting serious enough that it starts to really stand out that these young teenagers had no adult supervision.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost seems like a retcon. We just never saw him around, but he was there kind of keeping tabs on them. Except for, of course, Rock, who was an adult at 14.
Right. He's been an adult the whole time.
Right.
Maybe he was a supervisor. Like any time that like a Karate Kid who's 15 has some problem, he goes to the adult in the room, 14-year-old Cosmic Boy.
Right. Oh, I should mention maybe that this is all happening. I actually figured out what year it was happening and everything. This is this issue is in 2994. The Legion got together first in 2973. So this is 22 years after their first appearance.
So Rock is now 36?
Yes.
Damn.
36. He was born in, I have that written down somewhere around here too. 2958.
What's the day and month?
I should have written that down. I didn't, but it was like February 6th, I think.
Well, his birthday's this week, dude. Happy birthday, Cosmic Boy.
Happy birthday, Cosmic Boy. You know what would be interesting? I should look. You know how there's a Legion fan on Twitter who always posts those old
I was going to mention
calendar
that person,
dates.
Yeah.
I wonder if Tom and Mary like lined it up with that.
Oh, I'm sure they used those. Like, I think there was only a handful of people, or a handful of Legionnaires who got their birthday on that. But
right,
yeah, I bet they used
almost all of the like the Silver Age batch of Legionnaires. They're all like around his age, maybe a couple years younger, or in a couple cases, a couple years older. Like Phantom Girl and Triplicate Girl, I think, are older than him, and Colossal Boy might be the oldest one by like 2 years. But then by the time you get around to Invisible Kid 2, he's more than 10 years younger than Rock.
Oh, really? I guess that makes sense. Like if Rock is 28 and Invisible Kid is 18, that kind of works out.
Right.
I wanted to point out this drawing of Marla down here.
Yeah.
Like this is a kind of a classic kind of Giffen profile,
Uh-huh.
but to me it really looks like a Frank Robbins drawing. I don't know how familiar you are with Frank Robbins, but he'll do this stuff with like the big deep black brush strokes, which are
Mm-hmm.
provided by his inker and not him, but
Mm-hmm.
like he must use the side of his pencil to get that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like he does these. I don't know. I don't know if that's a real influence on him, but it really looks that way. And I was looking at something of his. It was maybe
As opposed to Al Gordon, right? Like you don't think Al Gordon's imposing that because it happens enough?
no. I think it's got to be a thing that Giffen does. That it's just the way he's drawing, like he's pulling his influences from different places, different only comics inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a guy who doesn't know shit about shit except comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he's ever or if he's into like the Milt Caniff style or that kind of stuff, or if it's like a Toth thing that is sort of like he combines his Toth thing with his Wally Wood thing and on, and it just winds up, you know, at the end looking like a Frank Robbins drawing or something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's really something there, and I always think about it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this looks like a Frank Robbins drawing. But then, I don't know. There was this long thread I saw on Twitter where they were talking about the Global Guardians, and they're
Oh yeah.
posting up these pictures or these pages from
Is
Justice
that
League.
Joe Staten?
No, they were Giffen drawn pages from Justice League International.
Oh right. I was thinking of didn't they have their own series earlier on?
They were in like Super Friends, which is more like Ramona Fradon, I guess, and it might have been Joe Staten did some of them. But the Giffen stuff, like it's the little bit earlier than Legion #1
Mm-hmm.
by not very long, a couple of years maybe.
Right.
But you can see the Toth influence in those, or I can anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be the inker. I'm not sure who was inking. It could have been Gordon. It could have been Joe Rubinstein. I don't remember who was inking the JLI stuff when Giffen drew those backup stories. But it looks like Toth. But then it also looks like he does these kind of 3/4 or almost profile drawings of people, and they have these kind of angular features, and they have a big lip, and they have deep shadows, and it just looks like the Caniff style, or even closer to Frank Robbins, which is like this much more. I don't know how you describe it. Is it impressionistic version of of the Caniff style? It's kind of like he's using big gestures. He's drawing them real fast. I think if a person likes this era of Keith Giffen, they should check out like, I don't know, like a 60s Frank Robbins comic, or even the fucking 70s Marvel Frank Robbins comic books. There's something there.
Like maybe he did like the Invaders or something in the 70s.
Yeah, he did the Shadow at DC. He did the Invaders. He did Flyman, Human Fly,
right?
Man from Atlantis, and some Batman. Some great Detective Comics issues of Batman.
Yeah, I always get the feeling like Giffen, like what we do know about him is he pumped out a lot of work and constantly, and it almost seems like, I don't know if he puts a lot of thought into it, like he's deliberately doing an homage to Robbins there, but he probably has books open all over the place. He's looking for ideas and things get stuck in his head. Maybe he's sort of swiping stuff here and there because he's just churning stuff out constantly, and he's very like a craftsman or a utilitarian. It's not necessarily art to him. I don't know. At least when he's pumping stuff out.
It's kind of weird because he's so workmanlike and so busy, but he also seems restless. And I think even Paul said he was restless in the this is in the letters page for Legion 50 when somebody was like, "Oh, I hear Keith is coming back," and Paul says, "Oh, it's not the Keith from 1983." and it's not the Keith from 1984. It's a different Keith. He's restless, and I see that, but also like I don't know how he has the time to not only keep. Well, see, I don't know if he's actually trying to improve his craft or it's the same level of storytelling craft with a different kind of veneer of art style on it or what. But yeah, he does keep changing in ways that other superhero dudes don't ever change.
Yeah, it's weird because it's almost like how a beginning cartoonist really obviously wears their influences on their sleeves, like maybe because you're not quite as sure of yourself, so you're like, how did that guy draw the guy holding a fork or something like that, and you refer back to stuff. But he's done it long enough that that should all be like really internalized, but it has that feel like maybe he's looking at other stuff too much, and it's imprinted in him, at least like whatever he's reading at that time shows up in his work a little bit.
Yeah. But see, I have a hard
whatever
time.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I have a hard time believing that he actually reads anything else or has time to or wants to read other comics, you know?
Right.
And,
well, I
and
don't.
also at this time in 1989, it's not like it is now where you can be
Right.
like, oh, I kind of curious about a Frank Robbins comic. And you can go buy a book off of Amazon and have it here tomorrow.
Right.
It's like, no, when I started reading comics and heard about Frank Robbins and got curious about it, you couldn't buy that shit. You couldn't find it anywhere, you know?
Right. I guess I picture him like just having huge stacks of comics, not necessarily to read, but it's like a morgue. Like, how do you draw that kind of thing? Oh, there's a building like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's a weird kind of idiot savant of just, I don't know, it's like drawing styles, like it.
Right. It seems like he would be to the point where whatever sort of natural Keith Giffen style there would be, he would have it by then.
Right.
Certainly when he's drawing really fast.
Yeah.
And doing all that work. But maybe it's sort of the other way around, I wonder, where like he is going so fast that he has to look at other stuff.
Yeah,
to cut corners. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking that they're like the way he does it is, I don't know, it's different than the way a lot of other people do it. Like this is a guy who's, I think his first comic started coming out in like 1974 or 5 or something. And here we're in 1989. So 15 years ago, he could draw really well. And now today of 1989, when Legion #1 came out, he's got the chops to do whatever he wants. And it seems like he is bored and is trying to like, maybe I'll draw it like Toth did. Maybe I'll draw it. And he even said like, oh, I was really infatuated with the 9-panel Watchmen thing. Maybe I'll draw it like...
Right.
But he's not trying to draw like Dave Gibbons. He's trying to do stories in 9 boxes on a page. And so he tries that.
Right.
On and on. I mean, and he had done the 9-panel stuff way before that.
I feel Watchmen. Like there is... Yeah, that's the first thing I was going to mention. I know he said that, but I think the first comics I saw by him were already in that 9-panel grid.
He did it pretty frequently way back. Yeah, before Watchmen.
Right. Like an 86-ish, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
Or 81-ish. Yeah.
He was doing 9 panels that early?
I just remember that Creeper ad. Do you remember that? For like this, he was like, I'm doing a 12-issue Creeper comic that never came out. And there was like a promo for it that was 12 or 9 panels.
Was it, well, no, 81, that would be before he was even on Legion, right?
Well, it was maybe about the time he was in Legion, maybe a year into it or something. So maybe 83 or 4, I guess. But I'd seen it before. Like I feel like he got it from Ditko, who used to do that all the time. And I assume that's where Alan Moore got it, because where else would he have gotten that from?
Definitely. I mean, well, even depends. That stuff is definitely influenced by Ditko, but I'm sure Ditko, a lot of the Golden Age comics were laid out like that, because early on, especially before Kirby started, doing crazy inventive layouts, they would structure it just like newspaper strips stacked up.
I mean, I don't remember in the really old stuff I've seen. I don't remember it ever being
Mhm.
this fixed of a grid where all the panels are
Right.
exactly the same size.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I guess probably not.
But it is
Like you
kind of an
say, it's
old,
a little sloppier, but
yeah,
they were usually like if you look at like early Supermans, a lot of them were like 4 tiers, very square panels. Maybe occasionally there'll be a circular panel squeezed in there, but
right.
because the very first comic books, which weren't original material, were just stacked up dailies or in Sundays. And then when they wanted to make original material, they first made it look like the reprints. So then we've switched into kind of a sepia tone color, which I think indicates flashback in this case, and they kind of do that in film sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
We've got 2 soldiers here. They eventually name one another, and we realize one of them is Rock Kryn, former Cosmic Boy, and it ends horrifically with an explosion, and somebody has been hurt, possibly dismembered here. We flip the page, we see that it was a dream. A dream Rock Kryn has had, a post-traumatic stress type of dream, which he's very nonchalant about in a kind of funny way. Like he mentions, well, at least I didn't wake up screaming this time. Like, I hope I didn't bother my wife with all my screaming, my morning screaming. It's just like a daily part of his life. His wife turns out to be Lydia, former night girl, former sub night girl. They finally gotten married and moved into the shambles of their dreams. Everything's very dilapidated. It seems, though Giffen kind of draws everything dilapidated. I assume just everything in the future is torn up and covered in stains.
Yeah.
And Lydia is very clearly pregnant here.
Yeah, like it's like he has this dream all the time.
Right.
Yeah, PTSD.
Right. It's not even like a big deal. It's just like I don't know how much they were talking about PTSD back then. Were they even calling it PTSD? Maybe it was still like shell shock or
probably shell shock or battle fatigue.
Battle fatigue. I think there's a whole George Carlin sketch about that.
But yeah, they start doing this kind of effect where it's only word balloons that kind of overlap each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell who's saying what, just as a way to emphasize kind of chaos happening.
Right.
And I think actually in later issues when they do stuff like this, they have Tom McGraw kind of color the whole, instead of the white, it's kind of a dirty magenta color, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
If they had thought of it, they would have done it here. They do it in subsequent issues.
I think it works good the way it is, though.
Yeah.
And the way the dream sort of falls apart towards the end is much like real dreams. And it also gives it kind of a scary Twilight Zone feel. Like, this isn't how it happened.
Right.
Yeah,
I think Rock, he's still looking pretty good in his undies here. Still staying fit, even though he's how old do you say he was? Like he's 38 now.
I think that's right.
I wish I looked that good when I was 38.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she's very pregnant. Does he ever have his child in this series? I mean, he has to, but I don't remember what. Like by issue 9, does he have a kid?
I've forgotten. For some reason, I thought it was by the Inman days, but maybe it was before.
Yeah, it seems like it would have to be somewhat prior to that because Inman didn't come on until 38 or 39 or something.
Well, I mean, we got through Levitz's whole run happened in like 5 or 6 years. I mean,
I guess they kind of write out Lyda, and she doesn't get used too often. So I bet they probably would cut to her in the annuals or something and show where she's at in her pregnancy that's been going on for 2 years.
Right. And that's the other thing. We don't know how long they carry.
Yeah, she's not human, huh? She's Cathunian.
Mm-hmm. Neither of them are human.
her baby may only grow in darkness or when the sun is down or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Crazy. Maybe spoons and forks like get stuck to her stomach because of Rock's
Oh,
lineage.
yeah, weird.
Or maybe his magnetic powers only work in the dark.
It's weird when these, I don't know how they, like these different, they're humanoid, right? They're not the same humans that we have here on planet Earth, but they look like humans, and they're white people from other planets. And then
Right. I think Invasion goes a long way to kind of smooth all that out, because aren't they all like Earth people who were experimented on?
Yeah, I guess so. But
thus getting the powers. And
I'm just thinking, like, what is it? How do they have kids together?
they're only like 1,000 years removed from one another, though. I mean,
Yeah,
they haven't like evolved into different like species.
yeah, but they have drastically different super abilities, which is kind of like what a different species would have.
That's true, but I don't think it would be any weirder than Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman having a kid, which is weird. But
and actually, Night Girl, she didn't have any inherent powers, right? Her father used her as a guinea pig and gave her the powers.
Oh, that does complicate things, maybe.
I would think that would probably
about that.
possibly make her unable to have children.
Maybe.
And maybe whatever made Cosmic Boy will lose his powers.
What a strange power to give your daughter if you're trying to get her into like the Legion.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
well, I don't think he was
like
trying to
that
get her into the Legion. He was trying to give her superpowers because he wished
Right.
that she was a boy. Man,
Right.
poor old Night Girl.
See, that power in particular seems like a shame to have wasted that origin on, because it does seem to lend itself to a possible strange evolutionary, like maybe the super predators, not that kind of super predator, like big monsters come out late at night, so it was advantageous for them to be at their peak performance in the dark. It's not any dumber than these guys developing magnetic powers to fend off metal monsters.
You said Predator, and all I can think of is Predator.
Oh, you mean like the one that Arnold Schwarzenegger fights, right?
Like this one. That Predator.
Right.
Did you ever watch Speed Zone?
No.
It stars
I've looked at that ad many times.
Melody Anderson, Peter Boyle, Donna Dixon, John Candy, Eugene Levy, Tim Matheson.
Well, I like those guys.
And the Smothers Brothers. Wow, that's some heavy hitters.
It's weird.
Speed Zone.
All the ones at the end I know. The first 2 or 3 names I don't think I knew.
Yeah.
Did you say Peter Boyle?
Peter Boyle, yeah, he's famous.
I know him.
Melody Anderson, I'm not familiar
No
with her.
idea.
Donna Dixon, she was the babe. She was actually married to Dan Aykroyd. What was she in? Donna Dixon. I think she was one of the girls in
Police Academy 4?
No, in what's the Tom Hanks Peter Scolari TV show? Bosom Buddies.
Bosom Buddies.
She was the beautiful blonde in Bosom Buddies. Was Donna
I
Dixon.
thought that was Peter Scolari.
He was beautiful too. Okay.
Like I said, everything seems really kind of run down and shabby here. Even the shower water is kind of yellow and green. And Lydia says it's almost toxic. But again, he's very nonchalant, like no big deal. It's toxic yellow-green water.
Well, yeah, she's like, just don't drink it. He's like, all right.
Right.
I never drink it
Yeah.
anyway.
We see that he has been trying unsuccessfully to convince her to leave Raw. He doesn't want his kid born there, and since she's from Cthulhu, she could actually go back there. Whereas he, because of whatever politics are going on that we don't fully understand yet, he is not allowed to leave the planet. He is stuck there. But she could still leave. But she refuses to go. And so we cut to the next page here where we see him going somewhere. He's supposed to meet his best friend Loomis somewhere. And it's just an opportunity to see what remains of Brawl, basically. There's been a big war. I don't think we explained that before. they fought the Imiskians. How do you say that? He doesn't have any vowels in there.
I think I always say Imsk.
Imsk. Imsk.
Imsk.
Imsk. I think I just insert imaginary vowels. I think I used to say like Imesk or Imesk in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense.
Well, you've been calling her Lydia. I did
it again.
I always say Lida.
Lida.
I don't know
Lida.
which is which. I don't know which could be right. I don't know. It's another one of those stupid names where it's like a weird version of a contemporary name, you know?
Right.
But it's like Lydda, Lida. But yeah, I bet they thought, oh, Lydia.
Lida sounds all right.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will correct us in the comments.
I hope. Just leave a comment, please. Everybody.
We've got to be pissing some of you guys off. Come on.
With all this false information, incorrect information. This doesn't, to me, read as like a war-torn planet. It looks like, it looks kind of like a slum or something, but it's so colorful.
Right.
He is talking about the beautiful morning skies. And then I guess
right.
It shows the skies here, and then gradually the next tier of panels, it looks all grungy, I guess.
Right. Well, right, and that kind of follows the narrative because, like, at the top, he's thinking back to, like, when he was a kid with Pull, his brother, and then, but as his thoughts get darker, and he's getting closer to, I think isn't he actually going to where the accident occurred? Or isn't he going to the bay?
I don't think so, because I think Venado Bay turns out to be on Imsk.
Oh, it is?
Because they do a whole Venado Bay issue. It's around issue 20, 19 or 20, I think.
Okay.
They tell the story, and yeah, it's a war between Brawl and Imsk. I don't think they've even revealed that yet in this issue. They do at the end in the text page.
They do.
But
when we get to Salu, they start talking about that.
Yeah, they begin to clear that up. But then some months later in the comic, they sort of tell that story, and they have Cosmic Boy and Shrinking Violet bury the hatchet or something, or talk it out or whatever.
Right.
But I think the Venado Bay thing happened in another place.
Okay. There's a couple cues in the next page that make it seem like that could be where he's going, but I believe you.
Yeah.
Maybe they changed their mind. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. This is the page I wanted to talk about, the comic strips. Like we've kind of talked about a little bit earlier. We talked about how it really, to me, reads like a daily newspaper strip in the way that it's condensed. I mean, the one page of the comic is so condensed and it's so deliberately paced in the same size panel boxes that it seems like a newspaper comic strip or a Sunday comic strip. And then this page is done just like a lot of those Gasoline Alley comic strips would be, where and that stuff didn't really get really wide exposure, I guess. I mean, of course, that had wide exposure when it came out in the 30s to everybody in the country who subscribed to the newspaper. But in the interim between whatever the 50s and the 90s, I don't know who saw those comic strips. But
well, I mean, using separate panels with a consistent background, I mean, I think we've seen that in the past. Like in earlier superhero comics.
Really, an effect like this where they have like a whole kind of tableau
like
background,
and maybe not all 9 panels, but
pieces.
I feel like we've seen ones where, like, say, a guy is walking down the street across 3 panels, and like all the sidewalks connect, and the street or the brick wall behind him connects all, like he's walking across the panels almost. But yeah, nothing quite like this. I think you're right about that.
I kind of feel like maybe even in another issue, they do one where it's all 9 panels. Like this one stops after the 6th panel. It doesn't continue, where it's a whole image in the page, but it's got this grid over top of it. And maybe there's word balloons that kind of flow across all 9.
Right. It's sort of paradoxical to me because, like, you have these, they seem more like newspaper strip panels the way they're constructed, but most of the time in this kind of book, and even in this book, if you look on the left side, what the artist ends up doing though is treating it more like film, because they can't fit, say, 4 figures in the panel. They tend to do lots of close-ups of faces.
Mm-hmm.
I think more so than you would see in a comic that has varying panel sizes. Like it kind of goes both ways, because I definitely see what you're saying on the right.
Yeah, this does seem like an anomaly when you compare it to this page where it's all kind of medium shots or close-ups or extreme close-ups. To do this kind of thing where it's almost like a pan or it's almost as if you're panning across these different places, and like this is your kind of viewfinder, this
right,
whatever 1/9 of the page. Like that's a little different. And in that oral history thing, I think Al Gordon addresses that and says, like, I suggested to Keith that he does something like that to kind of break it up a little bit. So maybe
it almost sounded like he kind of snuck it in a little bit. Like when he was inking it, and kind of steered Keith that way. Like there were panels that he was finishing and inking where he thought it would make sense for the backgrounds to be that way, instead of like saying 3 separate identical brick walls that he's walking by. It's all one brick wall.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so maybe this sensibility is kind of suggested by somebody other than Keith Giffen. Wow.
I do think that's Al Gordon's influence.
Yeah, this is the way Giffen would do it, with just a lot of people talking to each other.
Most certainly. So we see he's standing at a checkpoint here, and on the wall he sees some graffiti, or at least we think he sees it. It's not 100% clear. He may be hallucinating this, because it is Venado Bay, which, if it's not Venado, that was one of the things that made me think maybe this is Venado Bay he's going to. One of 2 things. But if it's not, it seems really out of place. Like, why would it be right there? And then why would it be blood? So the blood, we know he's clearly he starts going into another one of his flashbacks here. So it looks like things are becoming surreal. So what I'm saying is I'm not 100% sure that graffiti is even up there.
Oh, I guess I kind of assumed it was really there, and then he
triggers it.
Yeah, he lapses into this kind of flashback thing.
Right.
I just kind of think of the Venado Bay as like it's like their version of Vietnam, this unwinnable war that happened, and like in the 70s they had. I remember in Dog Day Afternoon, he gets them to start chanting Attica. Remember that part? And there was that prison riot. You know, it was like this kind of social issues kind of thing where people. It was just in the zeitgeist. And here on Burrell, there's probably wounded veterans, and they're floating around, guys just like Cosmic Boy. And some crazy guy with PTSD, like he cut a slice in his hand and he wrote it up there just as a way to like complain that this is what happened to him, or to get some
Well, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Another way is it is in fact written there, but it's just written in paint. And then, because in this middle tier, he seems to be moving into the imagined world. So maybe as he's segueing it into that, like the paint starts to become dripping blood. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he could be imagining it too. Like if you look at the dialogue, he says, my God, that's human blood. What kind of desperation could have driven someone to do this?
And at the top, he mentions, I mean, it's a little bit like it's probably there, but he says it seems bizarre that it's there. Like he said, I have not seen graffiti on Brawl in years. But I don't know why he wouldn't, as dilapidated as everything else is. But
Yeah, I mean they
maybe
could
they
be trying to make Cosmic Boy more, like, even more ill than we kind of
right,
assume he is. Like,
right.
I never really thought of it this way, but I guess now that you're pointing it out, it's like, yeah, maybe he is. Anytime he sees whatever a certain type of mess or whatever,
Hmm.
he starts to flash back, and yeah,
Right,
maybe he doesn't see the actual words of Venado Bay
right.
on there. Maybe he just sees a mess and he's like, "This is blood. This is whatever. This is what happened to me." Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a good way, I guess, like in a way that I had never really have seen to address
Hmm.
this kind of thing. Like they do it in 70s movies with these Vietnam vets. There's a ton of this Vietnam vet stuff that came out in the
Hmm.
70s and 80s, Rambo and whatever. Um,
Like the deer hunter, maybe.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, and like that was a big thing in the 80s, you know? Like that was
Hmm.
like dudes who 10 or 12 years ago had to go fight in a losing war when they were teenagers and stuff. Like,
Right.
perfect. This is a perfect thing to put in this comic book and
Hmm.
have it be have one of the characters be a victim of that.
Right. And it's a weird, interesting contrast, like between like his childhood, where he's also getting into super violent situations, but it's very cartoony, and like they always win, and nobody's getting dismembered. People are getting knocked out, and they don't end up with head traumas. And it's very clean cut. And then as an adult, he's in a very hyper realistic kind of war situation, very close to the real world, with complete with dismemberments and PTSD.
Right. Yeah, to me it's strange that a person like Cosmic Boy would fight in that war.
Hmm.
Like if you think about,
Well, he was drafted.
yeah, but like if you compare, like, what is the Legion of Superheroes in 2023? Is that like a professional sports team or what?
Hmm.
It's like if you sent LeBron James to
Right.
fight,
Why isn't he like selling bonds or
right?
something?
He
Right.
wouldn't fight in that war. He's too famous and too rich and too powerful is not the right word, but too influential
Right.
to ever like be in the war zone himself. But Cosmic Boy somehow got that. That happened. I guess it's because Brawl is his planet that is perpetually in depression. So even the Magno Ball
He's
champs can take a
also, I
fight.
mean, they've severely fallen out of favor with the powers that be at this time. Maybe they're like, yeah, he could be good infantry.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of this guy.
I like this effect where they have his flashback and there's these like blood splatters,
Uh huh.
but then the real world voice,
Yes.
or the flashback balloons have blood splatter in them, and then the real world voice has no blood splatter in it, or the guy is like, "Hey, I'm
Right.
talking to you. Hey, buddy. Hey, wait
Right.
up." I think that's kind of a cool effect. Kind of curious what that looked like in the script, even like how they wrote that.
And how much of this is it still John Workman at this point?
This is Todd Klein
Oh,
lettering
Todd
this
Klein.
issue. Yeah.
Workman does some of it, right? She's in
I think
that book, I think, or in that
yeah, I
article.
think Workman actually takes over maybe in the
Yeah.
second or third issue or something. Yeah, in my memory, most of it is John
Right.
Workman, and I
Um,
actually like John Workman better, and then Todd Klein, but to each their own.
I always like John Workman because he's like Simonson's go. Like Simonson only ever has Workman ink his work or
Oh
letter his
yeah,
work. I don't
yeah.
think I've ever seen him with a different letter.
I kind of like John Workman. I mean, I like the way his letters look,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also an indie cartoonist.
What?
Have you ever seen those John Workman comics?
No. What are you talking about? I had no idea.
No, he's done quite a bit. He did stuff in Dark Horse Presents.
Oh, really?
And he had like this comic that came out from like this kind of like weird pervy publisher, like these kind of softcore looking things.
Weird.
But he has a style that's sort of like Pete Morisi almost,
Oh,
but
was awesome.
it's a little bit more naturalistic than Pete Morisi. I don't know. I think I like the way he draws, and his letters look perfect for the comics that he's made. But
Mm-hmm.
then like his lettering looks great on whatever, all this other stuff on Legion, on Simonson, on and on. Yeah, he did a comic in Dark Horse Presents in about 5 or 6 issues of the early ones, like within the first year of Dark Horse Presents, called Roma. And they're all
That'd be before your time, wouldn't it? That's pretty early, right? 80s?
I've seen them as back issues, yeah.
Okay.
But they're drawn like a newspaper strip. They're drawn like you have to turn the comic book sideways to read them because they are all landscape for this page, right? They go this way.
Yeah.
But they look good. Check them out. Dark Horse Presents. Maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or something like that.
I miss books like Dark Horse Presents. I like anthology books. Several different. It's kind of neat. You buy one book and it has 2 or 3 very different things in it. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lost art.
Yeah, those early Dark Horse Presents, they had, I don't know, like they had like John Workman, Ron Randall, Tony Salmons, and then like The Mask or whatever by like Mark Badger or something, like totally off the wall.
Right. And then eventually you start getting like, well, Frank Miller, I think, started Sin City over there.
Yeah.
John Byrne did Next Men over there.
Yeah, I think I got one of those. Like the first one that has Next Men, Sin City, something by Gray Morrow in it, maybe.
Oh wow!
And then like Dave Johnson,
right?
You know, like it's really weird.
Right, and every now and then they have like a big alien story or something in there. Well, like a lot of issues would be guys you never heard of, and then the aliens or the predators would show up. And Flaming Carrot, I think Flaming Carrot was in there some.
Cosmic Boy is passing the checkpoint and he's going into the Forbidden Zone, whatever this is.
So the guard snaps Rock out of his little PTSD daydream, and we can tell if you look at him close, he's got beads of sweat.
Oh yeah, like he just went through something right there while he was waiting in line.
The guard seems pretty impressed with his crimson clearance, which apparently gives him free reign of the planet, but not so impressed to not hold on to it until Rock comes back. So he's not that in the clear. It's still a pretty oppressive place. Like,
I don't get this place. Like it's under heavy guard. Cosmic Boy, even with his special clearance, like I don't know why Cosmic Boy would have the special clearance. Maybe just because he used to be a Legionnaire, or he's high enough profile that you can't take away all his rights.
Right.
But it's this weird place where he goes, and it's like, why would you want to keep anybody out of this place? It looks terrible.
This is one of the other clues that made me think maybe this was the bay. Like it's quarantined off. The third reason is when we get to the bottom here, he says, Loomis, this better be good. Then make him meet him here. Like this is a place he does not want to go.
Yeah, he says, if you're dragging me out here for no reason, I swear to God.
Right. But this is his best friend. And if it's like, if you're dragging me to your house for no reason, I swear to God, that seems kind of douchey. It seems like we know it's his place, but that he lives there for some reason. But it seems like it's somewhere he does not want to go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think this winds up being Venado Bay. I could be wrong.
No, I believe you. But yeah. I feel
but
like...
I don't know what this place is. Like, this is just some ground zero where Imskins dropped a bomb or something, but then why is Loomis out here, you know?
Right.
Very mysterious.
I like Loomis, the new character with this issue, but I like that they kept him around.
You think he's named after Andrew Loomis, the famous artist? You seen those Andrew Loomis books? Like Steve Rude's way into him. He's this illustrator from the 40s and 50s, big into whatever illustration theory and stuff, has a handful of illustration books and composition books and stuff like that. Really great drawer of the mid 20th century.
That seems the most likely. Was that Donald Pleasant's name in the Halloween movies?
That could be. I've only ever seen the first one. I don't know. I only saw the first one like 3 years ago, too.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting you grew up in a really religious home.
We've talked about it. I never saw any R movie until I was 28 years old.
Didn't drink until you were 30.
I'm making up for lost time.
on to the other half of the page here. We have a change of scenes, and we seem to be. Are we above Brawl? There's an occupational headquarters for the Imiskians, I guess, where we see that a prisoner is being transported. And the prisoner is none other than Field Commander Sally Digby, formerly known as Shrinking Violet. She now has a large scar across her eye, and apparently her eye is bionic or artificial. We also learn that she is refusing to have the scar removed.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest change or the biggest surprise maybe for old time Legion fans is that
It probably was for me because, like I said, I missed all that 80s stuff. When I went back, she does there's sort of an in between point where she kind of becomes a lot tougher, more assertive. Like around the time she dumps Duplicate Boy.
yeah, I suppose it's actually maybe in my memory it's more around the time she gets her new costume where they switch. It's totally stupid to think of it this way, but like she wears a white and green skirt is her
Mm-hmm.
costume, and then it's changed to a black and green skirt,
Uh-huh.
and that's kind of a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, she goes from the white and green skirt to a black and green unitard, and
Right.
then she gets the skirt back, but it's instead of a little white collar, it's a black neck thing,
Right.
and I think she gets a new personality at that time, that
Right.
costume change, which is somewhere in the middle of the third volume Baxter series or something like that.
You don't think it I thought her personality change was kind of tied to her being like tortured and like a prisoner.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think she has a bigger change when she gets kind of an image overhaul too,
Right.
and I think then it happens at the same time that her personality changes a little bit.
Right. She always seems very punk rock to me there, and it's entirely because of Jaime Hernandez, that drawing he did of her in that costume
Yeah, that makes
for like
sense.
the Who's Who.
Yeah, like you can imagine the Who's Who. Like this is the way Jaime would draw her if she was in
Mm-hmm.
the 50s, and then like she looks like Hopi
Mm-hmm.
in here or something.
Right. Well, he did it. He did it in the Who's Who for sure.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying you could imagine. I'm like, no, he really
Oh no,
did.
no. Like I can imagine like if he was drawing her as a 50s character, it would look
Right.
the way he drew her in that comic.
Right.
And then if I imagine the way he would draw her in
Mm-hmm.
1989, yeah, it would look
Right.
like this.
Right.
When she, yeah, like you say, punk rock.
Right.
This is kind of how Hopi looked in a way. I don't think Hopi ever had this straight up buzz cut like this.
Right.
But just the kind of the body language, what little there is of it, kind of
Right.
looks like that. Kind of looks like, and I wonder if he had to have been right. Giffen had to have seen some of those Love and Rockets things, right? I don't know if he was
I don't
invested
know.
in the story or not.
Of course, those famously have a lot of 9-panel grids. When I kind of talked to him about other comics and indie comics, and if he'd ever thought about like doing independent work or like making mini comics of his thumbnails, he didn't seem very familiar with like indie comics, but maybe some of that has to do with that scathing comics journal review. Maybe he just steers away from anything close to that. But he's also from that kind of craftsman or that kind of like it's a job. Like, why would I do this for free? He didn't say that, but I could. That's the vibe I kind of got from him. Like,
yeah, I can totally see him as yeah. I mean, he is like one of these kind of journeyman corporate comic book makers,
right.
And he just has. There's something in him that wants to expand a little bit, but
right.
he is still just at the will of whatever sells and doesn't sell.
Right. Yeah. Like there was a sense like he didn't think it would sell anything or no one would give a shit.
But still, he's, if he's looking at Jose Munoz comics and we know he is because he's redrawing the panels in Ambush.
Right.
I don't know. He's probably seen some Jaime Hernandez comics. But yeah, I don't imagine that he's read a bunch of Love and Rockets and he's like, oh yeah, this Maggie Hopia relationship we could graft that on
Right, right,
to Lightning Lass and Saturn or Shrinking Violet. But you could almost see the connection there.
right.
And
For
and
sure.
this is also this is another one of these probe guys. This guy seems like he's got kind of an attitude, you know. He's a robot, but he's
Right. She's pretty dismissive of him, but we can't tell if that's because she thinks, he's just an appliance or if she just doesn't respect authority.
I think she probably does not respect this robot guy at
Right.
all.
Right.
Um, it's weird because these guys are totally new within the last 5 years, which is I don't know. It's kind of a strange, like brand new technology to be so ubiquitous in the universe. Like within 5 years, 5 years ago when we were reading Legion of Superheroes, no sense that there was anything like this, and now they're on every planet. They're in the military,
Right.
making. I don't know. It seems like this guy can
But
make
it's
decisions,
all
but I'm
just
not
sort of
sure.
matter of factly. It's not like for it to be, you would think it'd have a bigger impact in what's going on. Like they'd be talking about how it's changing society in the way that, like, social media
Hmm.
changed our society within 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know. This guy seems like he has an opinion, and he
Mm-hmm.
seems to be like effecting changes in the world around him. But then he's also maybe just like a receptionist. I don't know.
I'll have to dig deeper into that source book. Maybe they talk about it. I've also
Yeah.
been reading his, I'm a senator.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
looked at that today too. Like he had posts even last year, so he's still kind of working on it.
Yeah, I went all the way back to the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no reverse chronological order that I could find. That was a real pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah, blogs and yeah, that stuff is never very good for that.
It's all right though. I bookmarked it. I'm working my way through. So the general is offering her an honorable discharge in exchange for her silence about Venado Bay, but she completely refuses. And but she ultimately gets what she wants this way. She gets to keep a clean conscience. She has, I guess, she's a conscientious objector or a moral objector to what happened.
Yeah, she explained that she'd been in the brig or in
Right. She'd spent a
the
couple weeks in the brig.
is it the brig? She doesn't say brig. What's a word?
I think she does.
Stockade.
Stockade, right.
She's been in a stockade for some period of time for yeah, I guess because she's
Right.
not going to continue working with this military anymore.
Right. There was one thing I wasn't sure about. Maybe you could clarify. I mean, so did they win the war and they're occupying Brawl right now? Is that what's going on?
I
Because
kind of get that impression. Yeah.
that's the impression I get too.
That's why yeah, like this military satellite thing is hovering over
Right.
Brawl.
Right.
All the Brawl people are living in squalor, and
Right.
there's this military occupation force keeping an eye on them.
So, like, say that guard that he had to show his badge off to. Is he a Miskian then?
I would assume that he is,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
or he's a whatever, some sellout Brawlian working with the Imps government military or something to
Right.
keep people in line.
So anyway, they cut her loose. She's glad to be free, even if it's a dishonorable discharge. She gets get to keep a clean conscience, and we see that she is doing something that looks almost exactly like email, which I guess email probably existed in some form at that time. I don't know. Could people on the message boards email? Was
Yeah,
that
this is closer to BBS than
right?
email, I guess.
Right. But it's
I
pretty
think they had
close.
email back then, probably.
I mean, I certainly like the military or somebody had it, but
I'm a little young to know anything about the origins of email.
I don't think I saw an email until like maybe 94 or 95.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
were certainly
Yeah,
around.
I didn't even use the internet until 97.
Yeah. Did you get one of those discs in the mail?
Oh, she's writing her email,
right.
and then she has a gigantic send button on her
Right.
keyboard
It's
to
just
send the
like
email.
today. Uh,
It's crazy to think that somehow between now and 1,000 years from now, the send
mhm,
button just gets bigger by about
right.
5 times.
There's a so it looks like Garth has offered her the opportunity to work on their farm.
Yeah. Garth Rand's Lightning Lad.
Garth Rand's former Lightning Lad. I kind of like that in this middle left panel, it's cropped in such a way it doesn't really give you all the information. But this is like you'd have to be a fan to really catch the references. You know, they don't spell it out.
I I agree that they don't give the references. I don't agree that the cropping really does anything to it. It crops off like one letter on the right and the left side.
Fair enough. You can see it.
They almost did need to do it that way. It's like you would do that to make it seem like the letter is bigger than what we're shown.
Oh, right. Like it's a skinny little paragraph.
Yeah, or something. It's as if you could read that, scan through that, and you get the whole context, even though, there's like another third out here, and another
Right.
third out here. But the
Right.
truth is that, like it says, exactly where I elong. Okay, the B is gone. There's
Right.
one letter that's gone. I just hope Garth meant it. That's what that word is. When he said Y-O, and there's a U that's gone, you could use. So there's very little missing.
Right.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird. Like they wanted to make it seem like we're not getting the whole message and just getting the basics, but actually they just sheared off one letter's width of information off of each side.
Yeah. Well, it worked.
Yeah.
You just demystifying everything.
I like this outfit that she wears, where it's a tank top over a t-shirt over like a long sleeve, like full sleeve. I don't know. It's not even gloves. I don't think it's as if she's wearing like a whole like bodysuit with gloves beneath her t-shirt.
Oh yeah, they are gloves, aren't they?
She's probably real warm. A lot of layers. And I also like this last panel, this silhouette of the it's this ship that she's on, which is kind of a neat ship, like a really utilitarian ship.
So is she a passenger
over this kind of plain?
Is she a passenger or is she flying the ship?
It almost seems like she is the only person on this ship.
Seems like a big ship for one person.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like an automatic. They offered to drop her off wherever she wants, and they kicked her out. It's just like on autopilot to.
Definitely like a Star Wars kind of ship. Like you cannot land this ship; it has to stay in orbit, and the only way to get down is to take a secondary like shuttlecraft or be beamed down, a la Star Trek.
They don't beam in Legion, do they?
I don't know.
All right, so we onward to the next page. So back on Brawl, we have Rock talking to Loomis a bit before Loomis just runs off without telling him even why he dragged him out there. And it turns out it was all kind of set up by Reap, who's kind of arranged this incognito meeting because he doesn't really want the government paying attention to what he's got in store. And that's about all I have to say about this page. Other than, like I kind of mentioned before, I like this kind of slightly older, maybe a little more contented, more sure of himself version of Chameleon Boy. Less emo, less whiny.
Yeah, he definitely looks older.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at these close-ups.
Yeah.
And Loomis lives in this weird hut.
Yes.
I'm really curious what this area is. Like, it's a place that's like ecologically devastated.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, this man, and he has, like, I guess on the next page, it's revealed that he has one of these probe droids who lives with him. Oh no, that's actually, this is actually,
That's Chameleon Boy's personal assistant.
yeah. So he lives out here by himself and he traps. But it's a place where there's no prying eyes of the government out here in this area, but it's also all cordoned off
Right.
and guarded.
Well, we know that he was the guy with Rock when the explosion occurred. That's how he lost his arm. Yeah, I think he lost his powers, his magnetic powers as well. And they almost imply that he may have some mental illness going on here. Like Rock says something like half the things he says doesn't make any sense. Though he seems pretty lucid later in the series, but maybe they get him on some meds.
I guess we have to mention that both of these guys, I think both of these guys have lost they're natives of planet Baral, where
Right.
everybody has magnetic powers, but
Right.
because of their experience in the Brawl Imsk war, they've lost their magnetic abilities.
Right.
And this guy even has lost his arm. I think they
Right.
revealed it earlier in this.
And I think they get into there's like a specific weapon that does it, but even without knowing that, I like the idea since it's just a natural part of who they are. Of course, someone could sustain an injury where they would lose their power, just like they would lose their arm or something like that. It makes sense to me.
I mean, in one way, it seems kind of contrived and weird and silly, but I also like, oh, that's a perfect thing. Like there's a Vietnam analog that happened in the 30th century that they can use to kind of springboard stories for them.
Sure.
In a way that like real Vietnam spawned a million stories back in the 80s. But they have a war in the future and the same kind of shit happens. The same kind of Henry Kissinger fuckfaces are in charge of it, and the same kind of casualties occur among the old regular people and even among big stars like Cosmic Boy.
For sure.
Henry Kissinger fuckfaces.
Who's still fucking alive.
I know, and how come he hasn't fucking died yet?
It's unreal. I heard this guy just saying the other day, like, that's how he knows there's not a God, because that guy is still alive. As they're walking off, we see that we don't hear it. Reap is clearly telling Rock his plan, and he freaks out. It's like, what? Are you nuts?
Oh yeah, it's a little gag. He's like, well, I've got this scheme. Psst,
Right.
psst, 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 psst. Yeah, it's like a gag panel. It's like the whole thing is a gag. A comic strip gag. I feel like I read a whole like blog post not too long ago about how Keith Giffen's whole timing structure is like a comic strip gag. Like every scene he does is set up like a gag. It's less like a dramatic moment and more of like gag timing.
Well, I think at some point they're encouraged to write the pages like that. Like every page sort of has a punchline at the end, not necessarily like a funny thing, but some kind of payoff.
Yeah, I suppose it's a way to like end every page before you flip over to and you're in the next scene or the next location.
You know, something that just occurred to me since I think I was 11, 12 when I first read this, and I'd read it over and over as I got older, and I didn't always understand everything that was going on, and I'd have different ways of interpreting it as I got older. And I think a couple of years in, I became convinced that Loomis was Chameleon Boy in disguise because of this. He walks off and then he turns around and then he's just there, and then he says something about like sorry for the deception or the
Hmm.
and it made me was Loomis not here? Was that and maybe that's still the case. We know Loomis is off with his assistant, but we don't necessarily know that.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I
know.
guess on the next page it is totally revealed that Loomis is actually a distinct person from Chameleon Boy.
Oh no, I'm not implying that he's a different guy. I'm implying that the
I thought you were trying to say that maybe Loomis has been Chameleon Boy the whole time.
no, 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 no. What I'm saying is the Loomis that he has met up there.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. As a
Oh, yeah,
sideline, Loomis is talking to Chameleon Boy's probe droid.
that's right. Um, and he's clearly, yeah, he's living off the land there. He's eating lizards. It looks like some sort of some sort of like pest-like animal. He's living off some equivalent, brawling equivalent to like rats.
Well, he catches it and lets it go. Is that a metallic monster that you can't eat? Maybe.
That would see. Really, they should have. It'd make more sense instead of the magnetic powers. They'd have like super strong teeth and the ability to like digest metal, more like Tensel.
Hmm.
He mentions that he hopes that Reap Daggle isn't gonna ditch Rock once he finds out he doesn't have his power. This is the first page where or he refers to him as a Crip. And
Yeah.
at first I'd like he joined a gang sometime during the 5 years later. So here we see that Reap knew all along about his condition, and he wants him just the same. He doesn't need Cosmic Boy, he needs Rock Kryn. Everyone on this planet has that power. He can certainly afford to get someone who can use the power as well as Cosmic Boy ever did. And this is kind of like my favorite part of the book. It's probably the sappiest part where he's given up and he said, what does he say there? Like, there's no hope or the dream is dead. And then Chameleon Boy's like, no, you can't kill a dream.
Oh yeah, he's like, whatever we had, we let it die. No, you can't kill a dream.
Yeah, that's like the big dramatic part of the book.
You remember the rock? You remember the dream, Rock? You remember how it felt?
Right. And then we segue into another sepia kind of flashback, but notably, this is not a bad one. He's having a good flashback for a change. Really well drawn. I like how we all know the story so well that we don't need every little detail. It's like just bits and pieces, bits of dialogue.
This one they actually they mentioned the quintile crystal, which is like a sort of a much later retroactive story where it's like, oh, this is the very first case of the Legion of Superheroes, but it's from the 70s. Like it the
70s? Was it that late?
Yeah. This is sort of a conglomeration of what eventually we know as like the early first stories, because in Adventure 247 they didn't reveal any of this stuff. It happened in Superboy 147 where they wrote their origin, and then the quintile crystal story was from a couple of years after that.
I really love the whole look of that page, and I almost wish like I would read a whole Keith Giffen like Silver Age set story. Like I love the look of I love all their original costumes.
Yeah, he managed to pull off making them look like youngsters, and they like their old costumes look kind of blousy and baggy, but he still managed to stick in this guy, this dude with the eyeball thing, which is a Giffen character or a Giffen alien race that he draws everywhere.
Yes. When I'm looking at it now, it doesn't look like I could have sworn I remembered seeing. Didn't he have I thought he had his space helmet on. Not on, but I thought we saw like the neck part of it, but it doesn't look like it's there.
To me, it kind of looks like it is. Like you can see a little bit of a glare right here. Like he's like popping off of his
Oh,
head like it's a hoodie or something, so it's hanging behind him or
could be.
something.
Or those could be the rocket backpacks. I'm not sure. But I
Yeah,
like your theory better. I mean, he looks dumb with the bubble
yeah.
head, but I like the collar because he's Cosmic Boy.
Uh-huh.
So
I think one time we talked about this part where it says Rock Kryn optimum leadership potential, and if it kind of first showed
I
up
think so.
here, or like in their earliest whatever in the Superboy
Right.
147 story, like did they mention that Cosmic Boy was the ideal leader, or is that like a
Well,
later thing?
it does have the feel of something from like the Weisinger era, but I don't remember anything like that. And obviously, he was hardly ever the leader back then. He might have been the
Mm-hmm.
leader when we first met him. I don't actually remember a distinct period where he was the leader. Mostly it was like Saturn Girl. And I know he was leader at some point there, but it wasn't like for a long period or anything notable, I don't think.
Yeah, that was something I put in my notes. Is that like is Cosmic Boy really
Right.
so great? We learned that Giffen
Right.
just likes
It's
him,
his favorite character.
and he's his favorite Legionnaire. Like,
But it's probably in a weird way, it's probably the most lasting thing from this period of Legion
like
history because
on issue 300, this Cosmic Boy is the character that Giffen
right,
chose to draw, along with Prody, but he
right. He
chose
had the
Cosmic
limited
Boy.
series and everything about this has basically been erased and said, it's not canon or whatever. But one thing that has stuck more than anything else is he's basically been the leader ever since. He's like the go-to leader guy in every, like even when
Mm-hmm.
Levitz picks it back up, at least in the issues I've seen, he's the leader.
Yeah, for some reason people like that
Mm-hmm.
notion, but I think prior to
Mm-hmm.
this stuff, this volume 4 stuff, he was just an average guy, or an
I think he
average
was.
hero. And I think I was even looking at the I'm a Senator
Mm-hmm.
blog, and even Tom Bierbaum kind of points out that Giffen, there's kind of two versions of Cosmic Boy. There's the workaday stand up
Mm-hmm.
superhero guy from early
Mm-hmm.
in the run, and then there's the heart and soul of the Legion that Giffen liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's this stuff that's all Giffen. And people who are like, no, Rock Kryn, he's always been the heart and soul of the Legion. Like they didn't think that until this.
And yeah, I don't. I mean, I think he's a great character. He's one of my favorites. I like him a lot, and I think he's a great leader. But I don't know if he's the heart and soul. Again, like we were saying earlier, it seems more like it'd be someone like Polar Boy is more like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, optimistic about it, or in this case, Chameleon Boy.
Oh yeah,
Maybe.
like yeah, totally. Like Polar Boy and Chameleon Boy, those guys are the
Right.
true believers, the
Right.
real guys. Like Cosmic Boy, he quit. He quit. He
Right.
was like, "What Legion? Everybody is all old."
I think
And
he needs him because he's kind of a figurehead because he needs like, I'm getting one of the original guys back. So you got to take me seriously. And he's probably a good like tactical leader, but I don't know that he has that spirit that gets everybody like, yay.
it's like when you're doing the revival of an old TV show, you gotta get one of the old cast members on there.
Yeah.
So he went back and he got David
Mhm.
Duchovny back. He couldn't get
Yeah.
Gillian Anderson. She was
Yeah.
like, fuck that. You couldn't pay me enough to do
Right.
that. But David Duchovny was like, yeah, I'll be Mulder again, whatever.
Yep.
Or maybe we could talk about it in terms of Night Court.
Oh no, that's so sad. I don't have anything else to contribute to this issue.
All right, well, fuck it. So yeah, Cosmic Boy comes out of his little nostalgic fugue, remembering the early days of the Legion, and he's like, "Yeah, I remember how great it fucking felt, dude. Fucking so fucking good."
Well, he's like, it's never going to work because he's stuck here. And then reveals he's pulled some strings. He can get him off planet. And then he's like, I'll never be able to convince my wife. And he's like, she's already packed up. So's Loomis. They're all ready to go. We were leaving whether you wanted to go or not.
Right. And Cosmic Boy's like, why, you son of a bitch. You got me.
Just like the old days.
Yep. And we're off and running, ready for issue number 2. But there's a little epilogue here.
Yes. A mysterious figure is talking in the dark to another mysterious figure.
Yeah, this is weird. There's a one-word balloon that's in English and a word balloon that's in an alien language, and it is translated out here. It's one alien speaker speaking to another person, and then the guy speaking English or Interlac, he's like speak Interlac, and so they do. And then the case changes in some of these other word balloons. It's as if we're in a dark room talking to, I don't know, a couple of different people, maybe. The yellow word balloon who speaks alien is talking to,
and I think,
a couple of different people, maybe.
In subsequent pages like this, with this character, it looks like there's several people talking.
Yeah, I think they even bring in more balloons, right?
And then kind of it's like the gag at the end is it's one guy talking in the dark. But in this case, I think it actually is 2 people, because one of these is a Dominator spy, right?
Yeah, the yellow word balloons is a Dominator, and they're going into like the prison.
Right. They're going to let him loose and put a contract out on the Legion. Nip it in the bud before it reassembles.
How long do they draw this out?
I thought it was for...
Because is it revealed in the next issue?
I think it went a little bit.
I remember 3 or 4 issues where they would like do these little interludes with all the different word balloons and different font styles of the whatever, the people, the guy. Should we just say this is Roxas the Butcher who killed everyone on Trom?
Dun, dun, dun.
He's in prison, and the Dominators are going to
kill all of Element Lad's people.
He has kind of an interesting story. They do sort of an interesting thing with him, and this is a guy or a character who I don't think they did much with after that. He might have showed up 1 or 2 more times in all those intervening years, if at all. I don't know.
Well, okay, I think...
but they bring him back now.
I'm trying to remember if he... Okay, the issue that always stands out to me, of course, is when Element Lad wants to kill him to get revenge for what he did.
Oh, yeah, that's Chemical King. And
and Chemical King kind of pulls him off the ledge or whatever. But I can't remember if there was a first time or if they just bring that up in flashback. Did he show up once before? Was he in the Silver Age? I think maybe he was in the Silver Age.
I think they must have introduced the concept of him, even if they didn't actually show the whatever the genocide.
I think, well, no, they didn't do that. Trom. But I think he did show up in the Silver Age, like in the Kurt Swan days. And then, of course, he looked very different back then. He had a beard. But then that other story is like maybe Grill. And that's the one where we realize that he is so tortured either by his conscience or by literal ghosts. We're guessing he's gone crazy. And he thinks all the people he killed on Trom are like yelling at him and screaming at him in his head.
Oh, really? You think it was introduced that far back?
Well, at that point, yeah. He thinks they show like it's kind of a Twilight Zone kind of ending. Like you see that he's in his own hell and he sees all the ghosts around him like pointing at him or something, and he's begging for their forgiveness. And then you cut to the Legionnaires who see just him acting that way, and they're like, he's lost his mind. Like his conscience.
That sounds cool. That sounds kind of like could be very real spooky, you know?
It was a good issue. You haven't read it? Come on, man. Let's see if I can make it appear.
Well, that's a whole page, splash page.
Yeah, I think it is. It might be cropped here.
They really gave Roxas a makeover, didn't they?
Yep. Yeah, he seems... he reminds me of like that guy from the B-52s in this. Only homicidal.
Yeah.
Sign says, "Stay away, fools."
The next page is this a full page text thing. It talks about the United Planets collapse.
It's on an iPad.
Yeah, 2992. So that would be 2 years prior to the events of this issue.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Read this on your own time, viewer. This page is from 2990. This is practically right after the events of this guy.
Oh.
The president of Earth has issued list of points about why they should dissolve the Legion of Superheroes. And then this letter is from 2 years after this. It's the current Legion of Superheroes leader, Breck Bannon, we know as Polar Boy. He's going to dissolve the Legion against his better judgment. He wishes he didn't have to do it. He's been forced, his hand has been forced in ending the Legion of Superheroes.
Also, he's probably the only member at that point. Like almost everybody has walked at that point. Even the subs have walked by
these 3 letters take place before the events of this comic. And then there's this Flight Ring Village ad. You might want to go back earlier on our channel and watch the Flight Ring Village video where we talk about the Flight Ring Village promo for this new series. This is kind of neat. It's kind of sad to end on this note, where it's a whole page of comics about how the Earth government has turned Legion headquarters into luxury housing.
How does that work exactly? Like the government is renting out housing, selling? Are they a commercial enterprise now?
But anything it takes, right? Oh, rent it out, sell it, make money off of it.
Well, yeah, I could see them selling it. Maybe they sold it to whoever made it, the village, right?
Yeah, some developers owns it or manages it. Yeah, something called Earth Friends is the proprietor of the Flight Ring Village.
There's a lot of that shit happening here. Like the grade school I went to, they turned it into like what do you call them, like lofts or whatever, or like
oh yeah, live work space.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on
now. And yeah, they've even, like, they show Computo here. He's just like the janitor with a big dustbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a little coda to the issue to show just how far the Legion has fallen. And then there's this smarmy, smiling, cartoon Earth friends.
I still love that Brainiac 5 thought it would be funny to just take 2 of our greatest enemies and mash them together into like a guy.
Yeah, what was he thinking about?
You know, he not only does he write, I mean, obviously he draws like McGuire, but some of that is written like a little bit like the Justice League, because he's sort of like an Elron like character, that little robot. Him and Polar Boy are always sniping at each other.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, like he just can't not be a smartass, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this. I had for Superman Archives #1.
Yeah.
The most important, most imitated character in the history of comic book fiction, an original pristine set of Superman 1 through 4, if available, could sell for $50,000.
But for only $50, you can get badly recolored.
Very badly.
We made it. We actually did one of these issues. It didn't kill us. Of course.
Yeah, we got to the end. Giffen art.
Yeah. So I see you're drawing comics again. What's that about?
Am I? I've been working on the same 4-page comic strip for Austin since like August.
Yeah. Who are you on this time? I forgot. Gray Morrow?
I'm doing a John Fort comic.
Oh, right. Did we mention that? Was this issue dedicated to him?
Oh, was it? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was dedicated to like the greats. Dedicated to the memory of John Fort, too often overlooked.
Mm-hmm. That last panel, that's the thing that really stands out to me. It, like, feels primitive or something, because at some point pretty early on, don't they start using?
Oh yeah, they start to typeset this, huh?
Right. So that looks more like ambush bug or something.
Yeah.
We did it.
That's it. That's Legion number 1.
Well, what do we do now?